Welcome to a very special episode of the Comic Book Wars podcast. I'm Nico, your weekend update correspondent with comicbookspeculation.com, and I'm joined by a very special guest, my friend, Jon Z. Jon, will you please introduce yourself to our live audience?
Glad to be here. Been talking about doing it for probably, 2-3 months now, and glad that Nico got to have me. So I am on another channel, Tales from the Flipside channel, over at CBSI. Do the Tales from the Flipside show, and I also have started a show on foreign comics called Global Comic Safari that's been running about 6 weeks. So check them out if you like what we end up talking about. God only knows what that'll be.
Yeah, it's really good to have you here. We have been talking about this forever. I thought a great way to kind of introduce people who are watching to us, as our dynamic duo team, is to kind of describe how we met. Yeah, would you be so kind as to tell that story?
Oh, we talking the basement, huh?
No. I want to talk about the Leaning Tower.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so we had been talking on in the chats and all whatnot for a while, and I happened to be going to be visiting my in-laws, who were close enough to.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I should have been more specific. I want to rewind about 2 months earlier to the show we did together.
Oh God!
And the Leaning Tower.
Before that.
Yeah, the Leaning Tower.
Fuck, I forgot that was there. Oh God! I was doing a show in Dayton with Ben Stein, and we had set up. We were ready to go. Was it the Jan and Dan show or whatever there? And
is it Dan? Is it something in Dave?
God, it's
Dan and
something.
Oh God, we're terrible.
But
they're good shows.
I had set up a show, and I had just mentioned to him we were going. He's like, "Oh, it's in Ohio. That's close, right?" Only the other side of Ohio.
It's not close.
He's like, "I think I'll go do that. That sounds good." All right. So we're setting up. Me and Ben are setting up, got our racks up. We're like, sweet, we're ready to go. Ben hasn't priced his books, but other than that, we kind of look professional. I see this guy and some other guy who's never touched a comic come in and start constructing a rack out of God knows what. It is
PVC pipe.
You say that. I don't know. It looked like limp spaghetti.
And zip ties.
And zipped. I mean, mine is just zip ties and the same racks on some wood posts. But however you did it, these things were leaning, almost sagging. We're just waiting for books to fall all day. And then once you guys are set up, I realize it's you. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is the guy I've been talking to. Oh, fuck, we're in trouble. Things are going to go bad. And all day we're just waiting. Did anything ever fall? I think
no, but another guy's rack went down.
Oh, it was another guy. You're right.
Right.
Something dropping. I'm like, how did his crash and yours stayed up?
Yeah.
I was
how that happened. The backdrop is, I'm like, oh, that's okay. And I'm geographically challenged. I mean, I struggle in lots of areas of my life. Geography is one of them. So I'd somehow confused Canton and Dayton. And I'm like, oh, it's about 2 hours away. No big deal. So I called the promoter and I'm like, hey, you got any table space left? I thought I'd roll the dice. It was a small show. Sometimes they're not real well staffed. The guy's like, absolutely. I can get you a table. I'm like, cool. I'm going to go meet a couple guys there. I've never met them in person, but they're set up there. Can you try to get me next to them so we can BS during the show? Sure enough, the night before, because I obviously didn't have enough time to rent a van. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to take. And I know that I'm in trouble because I need to construct a wall. But if I'm not going to rent a van, I can't stick 2x4s in the trunk of my car. So I'm like, oh, we'll just make one out of PVC pipe. So, yeah. Then once I got back to the house and did the little Google Maps thing to figure out how far away, I realized I was 4.5 hours away. My buddy's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. I don't know. Why would you get me involved in this? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm just getting back in comics. This is important. I need to make friends again. Connections are important. It's a game of relationships. And he's like, you're an idiot.
Oh.
And I'm like, I'll pay you. And, sure enough, we went anyway. Yeah, so we had this leaning PVC Tower of Doom that I basically had resting on like random chairs that I'd sort of amassed behind it. And, it was like this as opposed to like this with books on it. I mean, it was a disaster. I don't think I bought anything at this show. I don't think I sold anything at this show. And it was a hoot. Now, I did, however, bring a friend, and he was kind enough to he picked up the best comic book nickname ever, and that was Rusty Staples.
I just sent you some pictures because I wanted you to relive its glory.
Yeah. So, yeah, Rusty had never so much as opened up a comic book in his entire life. But he was the only person at our booth that was able to sell a thing. This is what the booth looked like. It was that kind of nightmare. That's Jon's view. Look at it
behind all day.
Oh my!
Showing the side picture. Oh my God,
Lord. Yeah.
How did those books make it?
Who knows? Who knows? And I had trash at the show too. I was just trying to like dump stuff from a collection that I'd picked up.
And there was, there was zip ties holding your PVC from like spreading further at some point.
Yeah. Now, showing how poor Jon's judgment is, after that experience, I was able to hustle him into going digging with me.
Oh, you're like, I know this place. I'm like, all right, that's far.
Round two.
I'm gonna be close. I'm visiting my in-laws in Pittsburgh, and he's like, all right, we'll meet here and we'll head down. I didn't know it was 2 hours away from there, but that's all right. We show up at this shop in the middle of nowhere town. He's like, I got it in. We sit there, and some guy's sitting there waiting to get in. We had to wait about
smoking a cigarette, sitting on the corner,
using the Wi-Fi.
It looks like, it looks right. That's what he said. He's like, I use the Wi-Fi here.
It's like 100-year-old building. Looks like it was a grocery store at one point, like a corner grocery store 50 years ago. And we go in finally when the owner or the shop manager gets there, whoever it is, and you talk your way in, and it's pretty cool upstairs. And he's like, all right, we'll let you down. I mean, we go into this basement that is just the thing of, the basement itself is the thing of nightmares. It's not where comics should live. I mean,
there's literally water dripping from the ceiling in a certain area, right? Like onto the books that are not covered.
You go down the steps, and there's
no lights in a part of it, right? Like we're using our flashlights to look through books or our phone lights.
There's a section where there's boxes stacked upon boxes, like 4x4x4x4, 10 tall, and there's
long boxes, not short boxes.
5 or 6 of those stacks that we're like, well, we should tackle those, but those look heavy. Let's look. The walls are lined with shelves and books. And we're like, let's start there. And then we see in the back, there's another like smaller cavern that we go in, and it is just
rusty metal shelving.
Oh yeah, and
not a light to be had, not an overhead light to be had.
Oh, there's no light,
and there's water coming down from the ceiling.
And a cat.
And I'm like, it's not raining outside. Like, where is this water coming from?
Oh God, no! There's a cat in there. It is. I
forgot about the cat.
Yeah. So scary. And we're picking through books, and the first couple we find are like, well, these are good books, but man, they're wet. They are maybe cat pee, maybe water. We don't know. There was Catwoman Hughes stuff, and we're like,
we got a ton of Catwoman Hughes. I think you just settled on kind of the one higher end the book in the run.
Oh, the 164, the one with the old Wonder Woman.
Like the Golden Age Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous, but yeah, I think we each got a couple copies of that, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to press them, so I'm like, you may as well take them because I'm not going to send the press.
Okay, you passed. We ended up with about, a dozen copies of Vengeance 1.
Yeah, I sold those not too long ago, finally.
Smart.
And yeah, oh god, we had a lot of decent finds. I mean, these guys knew what they were doing. This was when Immortal Hulk was happening. We found several copies down there, but like they had those on the wall for $50. So I just
we weren't trying to take advantage of the people that were in the place, right? Like
came up there, I said, "Here, we found these down there. You might want them," and handed him that stack. Like, here, good faith. We did some work. We found these. You likely want these. You're selling them here,
right?
And we didn't have any expectation. We just like, here, this is what we want. How long were we down there? 10 hours?
A long time. Well, they made us stop, remember?
Yeah.
The guy's like, look, I gotta leave. You guys gotta come up now.
About us until
he's right
4 o'clock.
Until he wanted out of the building. And so we go upstairs with stacks, and we're like, how much for these stacks of books? Didn't haggle, paid them exactly what they asked for.
After 2 hours of him researching them.
That's correct.
It was 2 hours to check out.
Yeah, and I'm now banned from the building because we left it a mess, and I wasn't appreciative, or
I don't think we left it a mess.
Regardless, the point is, I'm banned from the building. I'm no longer permitted at the shop. Right?
3 of those stacks of boxes and put them all back. I bet we left 1 or 2 long boxes askew somewhere. But man, that's the longest I've dug through comics in my life.
It was fun though.
Oh God,
that's how John and I got to know one another.
I remember saying, here's the ones I really want, and they were the ones that I thought he would think were valuable. It was like a CGC 98 Witchblade and a weird War Tales 1 and something else. And I'm thinking he's going to charge full market for those. And those he was like, oh, like 50, 20, 15. Okay. But then on like the $10 books, he's like 8. So it was like,
hold on.
Book for the record, I really want it.
For the record, I took all of the books that you picked that you were like, I'm not paying up for them. I paid for them anyway.
And you went back and negotiated for like $100 at the end.
Yeah, I took them all. Didn't leave much behind other than what we gave him. Like, hey,
we gave him a stack of like 10 books. Like, we weren't even going to try and negotiate with them.
Yeah, like I think these are good books.
Here's a goodwill offering.
Yeah. So, alas, but that's how we became friends.
Oh yeah, oh my God, that was my wife at the end of the night, because I think I got home.
You probably smelled like fucking cat piss and.
Oh yeah, my eyes were bleeding from all
I think John. Wait, we didn't eat anything. John.
The granola.
He's like, I've got celiac disease. I'm not like one of those people who pretends like they have celiac disease. Like I really am gluten intolerant. I was just diagnosed. It was
literally a month after I was diagnosed. My wife sending me.
I've got a bar. And I'll split it with you.
I'd like to.
I'm like,
I had not tried.
That's very nice of you. Thank you, John. I'll take half of your bar. I would have been better off trying to eat one of the fucking comics or one of the cat turds. I mean, it was the least appealing, least edible.
It was the worst
treat ever. It was horrible.
Shouldn't have given it to the cat.
Oh my God. All right. Other than lamenting our misadventures together, I really asked you to come here to kind of talk about not simply the emerging global comic market, but about the market generally, about kind of the history of your involvement in comics, and what you guys are doing on the flip side, what you've done in the past, what you plan to be doing in the future. I really appreciated you guys having me on the show. That meant a lot to me. I'm like, one of those people who's like, long-time listener, Nico here, because you guys and Unpressable Defects were absolutely instrumental to getting me back into comics at kind of a strange time in my life, and that will always mean a lot to me. So I learned a lot about the comic market. I'd been out of comics for about 5 years, just from kind of like mass dosing UD and Tales from the Flip Side in my head. And, that was super cool for me to be on the show years later. And as you can see, I've now basically absconded with the Unpressable Defects logo from Jimmy. So pretty excited about both those developments. Now, tell me, how did you get back into comics?
So I was like everybody else, into it in the 80s and early 90s, maybe mid 90s even. And then, college happened and I just left it. So didn't do anything for probably 15 years. And then my wife mistakenly, for our first anniversary as paper, she bought me a gift card to a comic shop. Like, I remember you liked comics at one point. I thought you'd try them again. Most expensive gift she's ever given me. Turned into, for first year or so, I was just buying some trades and reading some stuff. And then I buying a few things on eBay. I started liking the Golden Age books, and I was like, oh, $50, $100 pop. That's expensive. I shouldn't do that. But I bought a few, and then I had to sell some. So I started going through my old collection, seeing what I could sell, and I flipped, some books in my head were like, wow, that's awesome. First Nightwing, and some of that stuff I sold, and like, I can trade that in for other stuff. So I liquidated a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, well, now I'm out of stuff. And as I'm doing this, I'm like trying to figure out how to grade, trying to figure out how to learn, research sites. And I stumble upon the CBSI Google Plus group. And it takes me probably 2 months plus account, but I do. And then just start talking to everybody, because it was a pretty welcoming community and going and and everybody's doing all the stuff. And several years of that, we were all writing.
For those who are new to comics, can you kind of explain what Google Plus was?
Google Plus was somewhere,
from what I hear, glory days.
Well, it was a platform that nobody used. I mean, very few people used it. It was like supposed to be for professionals, less, it was not quite Facebook, but they had the Hangout, which was just an outstanding version of Messenger, which made it great. I mean, otherwise it acts a lot like the other sites and functionality there, but it had some categories. It let you do a few more things than some of the other sites because it was Google. And but somehow this bastion of Google Plus became, places where people didn't actually do their real social media, like their side accounts. All these comic people ended up there. And if you look, there were other groups of just other things. It became just a subculture area, because you could kind of have a private account there that nobody was really caring about, because your parents
were there a lot of people that
sisters aren't following you on Google Plus.
Were there a lot of people that were going there as an alternative to the CGC boards, or is this a different crowd entirely? Like, how the hell did people find Google Hangouts, Google Plus for comics?
There were definitely some people that left the CGC boards because it, as we know, it's a lot of angry people there. There were some guys, the
nicest way anyone's described it. Yeah.
There were some guys from some other forums that had gone, and there was Chew floating around and some other stuff. Your buddy's Comic Book Scalping was around, and I think all these guys kind of in the comments going, and Trey, who founded the group, started it with a handful of guys. They were just trading information, showing haul picks. What did they pick up? What were they flipping? What were they selling? List of stuff. So like all this stuff that now has kind of become websites and apps, and all this information was kind of being disseminated here. Like I had heard at one point, this was before I really got in, that the modern threads on the CGC boards were great, but this was kind of a little more alive, a little more.
Yeah, they were great too.
And it was just, I think it was just a little more easy to get to know people. I mean, I'd talked to people tons, and then, it's probably years before I met several of them, but it was a good social group. There would be Hangouts running 24 hours a day. If you put 20 guys in a Hangouts, it would just be nonstop. Hey, I did this. Hey, I know that. And, there's BSing in there, but it was a great community, and we had a great community attitude, and we would do fundraisers and charities and all this good stuff. And then Trey started a website, and, took a little bit of the fun out to a degree, but it was kind of cool to have websites. We were writing articles and taking some of this information and giving it to the people, because before it was just private. We do Google Docs and slideshows and just all this stuff amongst the couple hundred, or at some point it became several thousand people there, and then it kind of opened it up. And I think that's really I don't think it's what caused spec to go crazy, but I think it was one of those kind of factors in there, the top 10 list and all those things that kind of grew out of it became some of the early things that made the thing kind of blow up.
Now, was there a top 10 list with Google Hangouts?
No, it started with the site, I think.
Okay.
It wasn't even the first article of it, but it was one of the early articles that was doing very well. And originally it was Trey doing it for probably the first year or two. And then he handed it off to Ben, who's been doing it ever since.
Okay. And Ben is obviously on Tales from the Flip Side with you.
Yeah, he's one of our co-hosts that, we're sometimes sporadic. He's doing some other things this season because he's got kids and family stuff, but he'll be rejoining us more as we drift into spring.
Nice.
We do a stream on the top 10 on Friday nights too. So we're doing all kinds of trying to be across media with it.
Okay, let me ask you this: when you got back into comics, what market were you playing in? I mean, the majority of your buys were what?
I was just buying things that were low. I was bin digging initially and just flipping those things. Truthfully, the first books that really got me interested were the Golden Age stuff. I was buying a lot of Captain Marvel Adventures and some of that stuff. Not a lot, but a couple books. And then I got into the flipping. So I was buying books to flip and buying books to sell. And you kind of lost some of the fun because you weren't buying anything to keep for a long time. But, as you'd get enough inventory going, you'd eventually find something you want to buy and set it aside. You find something you want to buy and set it aside and try and keep finding going. As we got into it, it more transitioned to, okay, what are we speculating on? What do we think is going to be worth something? I mean, this was back when Marvel Phase 1 was kind of ending. We're heading into Phase 2 and things just kind of got a little crazy. People, as soon as Phase 2 was announced, these books were jumping crazy and then you're trying to figure out what's the next TV show, what's the next thing, doing lots of that. And as kind of time went on, I'm not saying I got bored of it. I just kind of got tired of the hustle and I started moving in back to what do I want to invest in? What do I, buy what you like? What do I like? And I started just buying some of the books that I wanted as a kid, some of the books I liked. And yeah, do I sell some if I got something that went up enough that I could upgrade to something different? Yeah, I did. But I've kind of slowly transitioned to, if I'm going to call it investing, it's more of a long-term. I bought quality books that probably will go up in value as people appreciate them more or generational changes happen. I like a lot of Copper Age books and some of the independent titles that, if more people want them, there's just not a ton of them out there.
Yeah, you and I both have some eclectic tastes.
Yes.
There's no question about it. And, for a lot of guys, it's impossible to find books like that. Short of going to eBay, they can't go and look through long boxes. Are you able to do that? Or are you able to go to local stores and dig through boxes and find this stuff? Or are the majority of your purchases done online?
I mean, I have some decent shops and I can find a few things, but I mean, there's just not new inventory coming in all the time. So I won't say I never get a deal local, but a lot of it is online or networking or I give eBay a lot of business. I don't want to, but sometimes if you like the things that are off the beaten track, that's where they're going to pop up. They're not going to pop up too often anywhere else, especially locally or at a con. So some of these things, yeah, I do buy at eBay, but I'm trying to find things that maybe cost me $50 now, but cost me $200 next year.
All right, I want to talk about this Global Comic Safari. Clearly, you're not buying those books at your local comic shop. Oh. What is Global Comic Safari? Can you kind of explain that for those that are unfamiliar?
All right, so it had to be 4 or 5 years ago. We've all seen, I hope, the Spider-Man 300 Italian on the wall there. Well, I got one here. I got 5 of them here, but whatever. This guy. I remember seeing this.
Hold on. It's too pretty. Yeah, the problem is you keep buying them all. I don't even have one for myself.
I had seen this,
It's
and
gorgeous.
I'd known it existed. I didn't really understand what it was. I thought it was a variant or whatever. And man, this was IndieCon probably 6 years ago. I went with my kids, and I wasn't set up. I didn't set up the first one. After that, I set up for all the rest. And I saw these two guys with a wall of books, no price tags on it, and I'm like, what is that? And they had set up a display just to show off these books and gather interest. And they had, 10, 20 versions of ASM 300, same amount of 129 and a couple other books. And I'm like, what is this? And I ended up chatting with them, and it ended up being Matt Roybal, who's my co-host on Global Comic Safari, and Tim Bildheiser, who now is a CGC consultant, employee. I don't know. He's their foreign kind of lead, helps them do all that kind of good stuff, do the research, be the expert. He doesn't like being called an expert, but he kind of is. So I had seen those, and I kind of got into it. They have a Facebook group, so I kind of just joined it and was watching for a few years. And they tell stories and talk about books and show books, and I kept seeing them. I'm like, man, these things are crazy. And one day Matt does a kind of post on these non-canon Spider-Man books that probably some of you have heard of. If you watched any of our channels, you've probably seen at least a little bit of it. The wedding issue and the Big Booty Gwen and something. I'm like, wow, those are amazing. I need some of those. So I kind of got talking to Matt on the side and said, hey, if you ever find any of these, let me know. I'm interested. And I, chatted on the group. And at some point in time, he stumbled upon the Gwen issue, which is right there. And this copy, which
hold on. Oh my.
Is, from what I am told, the first graded example of any of the non-canons at either company. The census could be confirmed, and Tim at the time knew CBCS and could say that he had not seen any verified. So from all my information, that's the first graded copy of any of the non-canons. So I kept it, got a great deal because Matt's like, I'm looking to sell it for somebody. They want this much. And I'm like, yes. I think early on the foreign market, they're so used to nobody knows what they're doing. So nobody's paying American Crazy Premium. So when somebody asks what Crazy American Premium, I think they all balked a little bit. And me coming from the CBSI side of, I'm paying some stupid amount for these variants or this or that. I said,
1 in 200,
yeah.
Black Widow, J. Scott Campbell, nobody really cares.
Exactly.
But I'll pay $250 for it. And
the number he threw me, I was like, oh, it's a little bit, but yes, I haven't seen one of these in the time I've been watching. I want it. And I bought it. And then, Matt's like, anytime he sees other ones, he was sending me links. I'm great. Next thing I know, I got half a short box of these. And the rest of the market started kind of chattering about it a little bit. We had an episode on Tales from the Flip Side that still is our highest viewed episode. I think it's 87 maybe. And we had Matt on and just talked about it and showed some sets and did some of this, and people just kept watching. Had him on another time, and I'm like, you know what? This is a topic nobody's talking about. There's some crazy stuff there. Matt keeps posting articles to this Facebook group, and I'm like, man, I don't know. And we chatted about it a long time and finally said, let's just do it. Let's just do a show on foreign comics. I don't know if anybody's going to watch. I'm not even sure if people do, but we're having fun doing it. And so we started with the concept of showing sets. A set is all the kind of editions of a cover of across the globe that we know publish. The different ages have different numbers. Golden Age ones might have 2, 3, 4. Some of the modern stuff have 50. But you're building all the versions of this book, at least known versions, because sometimes people think they have a set and next thing a new one pops up out of nowhere. So just seeing these things together, seeing 50 different editions of that cover is crazy. I know, there's homages, 300 and all that stuff, but that's not what this is. This is stuff that was kind of printed in other countries and took their little spin on it. And
now I noticed one book in the background on your wall that was my first introduction to foreign editions, and that's the Supergirl book.
the Turner.
And can we talk a little bit about that? I think a lot of the guys that are probably more traditional viewers of whether it's Tales from the Flip Side or Comic Book Wars or UD Before Us, were familiar with the Turner variant. They were familiar with the Delato Batman Joker book. I mean, those books were getting big numbers.
Absolutely. Some of that stuff just got crazy. Turner was one of the first ones I remember chasing. It was before I was really even to variants. I mean, I knew it was a form.
Do you have a blue label?
No, that's a green.
Are there blue labels?
4.
Wow.
4 blue, 1 yellow. And it's only because somebody was a friend of CGC. I did see one of the blue labels sell the other day, and I had missed it. I caught it afterwards.
Yeah, you and me both. We both talked about how we missed it.
I know where one of the other blue labels live.
Yeah.
And
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've not seen the yellow, so I know it exists. But that book it's got a green label because they numbered each one to 500. I don't know if there's actually 500. I've heard that there's some artist proofs or some proof books out there, so it might be slightly higher than that. But limited edition, 500 of them. They took, which forums do a lot. They took an image from inside the book and made it the cover. A great image that just, they made a Comic-Con edition of later on. But this one has kind of stood out as that first foreign variant. People are like, I will pay a lot of money for that. I want it. It's limited. You can't find it. You can't order it. You can't do anything to get it. That Matina you brought up about was another one that happened. What was that? I can't remember the number on that one. I apologize, but
it was. Oh, I thought that was Matina, not Delato, the Joker Batman one.
Oh man, it might be Delato.
I can't remember. Right? But the point is, both of these books had other editions, for lack of a better description, because the Batman Joker book was published. That image, that artwork was published on the cover of a trade paperback. Mm-hmm. We saw the Comic-Con edition of the Supergirl book, and didn't seem to affect the price tag on these books at all.
That was a little slow. I mean,
that's it.
It plateaued for a while, but it didn't drop. I just think the blue is just a little more iconic than the new one, and it's the rarity. I mean, it is. I mean, if there were 500 of them, that's it. 550 maybe if we want to argue. Let's it.
Yeah. Now, what do we think the numbers are if we had to guess on some of the non-canon books? I mean, is it impossible to even begin to tell?
I don't think there's enough print run information to even start a guess. Like, we don't know what print runs were in Mexico at the time, but I can tell you they weren't a bag and board culture. The environment is not, people don't have huge houses, or at least didn't in the 60s and 70s, and things just got thrown out. I mean, it just was, it looked to the kind of the golden age here. It wasn't a collectible, and I don't think it was a collectible then. Whereas here in the 60s and 70s, kids were already kind of like, oh, I'm going to keep these.
Yeah. Now, remember, it's important to kind of talk about, it's not just Spider-Man that was non-canon, right? I mean, you've got non-canon Shang-Chi. They actually published a Lady Chica Kung Fu that has some exceptional covers that I've never been able to get my hands on. Non-canon Fantastic Four, non-canon Black Panther, non-canon X-Men.
There were 2 runs or 2 publishers. The La Prensas are the kind of the big run everybody talks about, which is the Spider-Man run. And I think that's the longest chunk of them. There was a Mac division, which you're talking about, had the Black Panther and all that stuff. And they all kind of went off the grid there, whether licensed, unlicensed, it's a little bit of a argument of what that is. But that Mac run had several titles that had, I don't know, a handful of non-canons of all of them. Nick Fury was actually the other one in La Prensa that's going, and we've shared some of those covers. Some well-drawn women, I guess, and all kinds of others. It was just stuff that wasn't done here. And I think it's the art that got it is the just how it was different, but not that different, and it just caught the eye, I think. But they're not making more of it. Even if there is, let's say there's thousands of them, nobody has access to those. It's not like you can go to a shop and there's dollar bin diggers getting them. They're in collections, because there's been guys doing this hobby.
In collections in other countries.
Yes.
Right.
The Facebook group here that these foreign collectors are, they started on the CGC forum too. And they've been doing this 10, 12 years. And they've had people in these countries and communicated. And they're like, I'll find one once in a while, but it's usually a private collection. It's not like you're going to shops and raiding them. Like, in the early days of speculation.
They're not going to the basement where you and I went.
You could go to
come up with a stack of books.
Come out with 20 copies of Miss Marvel 1. It isn't happening. These books are just not. We won't say they're ungodly scarce, but they're ungodly difficult to source, is how we use the word source. Get them from wherever they are to here. And then you go to smaller and smaller countries and it gets worse.
There's clearly shipping problems.
Oh, yeah. Thailand is the one that we hear a lot about. Taiwanese, Filipinos, those ones are incredibly small countries, which the print runs were incredibly small, and the environment and the storage and the just space, they're non-existent. The ASM 300 set, that the Filipino is like the Grail because they just don't pop up. There's 8, maybe 10 of them that have surfaced in this amount of time. And there's been people actively, posting in papers and networking. I mean, you guys, somebody from the Philippines that's been kind of trying to hunt.
Come up with nothing.
Yeah. They're just not there. So some of these,
literally nothing.
Some of these there's no survivors. The survivor pool is almost nothing. It's similar to the golden age, but then think that the print run started at the thousands instead of the millions. Top 5 books, huh?
They asked
at some point.
Pardon me?
I think I've done that at some point. I don't know if I'm prepared. They're not down here.
Well, we ought to talk about some of the ones you got in arm's length. You, my friend, do better than almost anybody I know. Come up with some super cool stuff. You really do. It's quite commendable.
Well, I just think I kind of got off the grid early and started looking at some of these obscure things. I was a Frazetta fan early on. I liked some of the golden age superheroes. I don't know why. I've had some stuff that I regret letting go that I shouldn't have. But I just had always been drawn to it. I think it's not that I know more than anybody else. I think I just appreciate things that maybe not everybody appreciates. So I'm the only one, not the only one buying them, but I'm one of a small group of people buying them versus hundreds of thousands of people looking for these same books.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Yeah. How many books do you buy a week?
Anywhere between 0 and 5, but I don't buy too many. I don't buy any new books. Let's be honest. I'll buy.
When was the last time you purchased a book off the rack, if you can remember?
I bought some Teen Titans Go issues because I'm building a run for the giggles, but I only go when I wander in there and pick them up. And I was reading the most recent DC Shazam run in floppies for a while. I think I got to issue 8 or no, maybe 6 when they did a hiatus, and I just haven't been back. So it's not that I appreciate it. I just don't go with that purpose. I'll buy trades. My oldest is a very avarice reader. So he's like, what do you got? What can I read? What can I read? So I'll pick up any trades I can find and read what he's reading and just share it. But I just don't buy the floppies. I would rather save that money and buy something unique.
When it comes down to it, you're not on the hot book of the week.
No, unless I happen to.
No copies of Hell Arisen 3.
The last time I ran into a shop and stumbled upon new books was when We Can Never Go Home Again was big. Which
is before I was collecting.
Yeah, this happened
again.
5 years ago. We were in Pittsburgh, and I was at a shop that wasn't my own, and it was Thursday even, and they had 10 copies of this book on the shelf, and I was like, "Oh, I'll buy those." But I just don't go hunting the new ones. There's so many other people doing it. I just don't have it anymore. You could do it online, but I don't even think you can do it like there anymore. All the stores are marking them up. It's just not worth the work.
Everybody wants to cry about that, John. They all want to cry that you're not, that you're, you should be out there supporting the market, right? Like that's a common critique I get of myself for not, being a Wednesday warrior. As if there's like a right way and a wrong way to collect, and you do it one way and I do it a different way. And your way is wrong. Look how right I am in your wrongness. There's a lot of that in the comic community.
I think I just appreciate comics for what they are. I like the stories and I'll read them. I just don't need to be out there every week. I've supported 2 or 3 shops in my day. They've just closed. And it's so hard to build new relationships that, yes, I'll go to some shops. I buy book. I'll buy back issues. I'll buy trades. Truthfully, go buy the trades because they make more profit off the trades than they do the floppies. So buy some trades. But it's how I'm choosing to do it. I don't need to go out there and buy the new variant and hope that it goes. I paid $15, hope it goes to 25 or 30, but half the time it goes to 3. So I'm just not doing it. The math doesn't make sense. The time isn't worth it. And I don't get any joy out of it. I have no connection to that image that's 3 minutes old. I have a connection to an image that's 50 years old that I've wanted since I was 10,
Yeah, now that's I think a lot of what Tales from the Flip Side is built on is the nostalgia from our youth, right? I mean, you guys do a pretty incredible job of kind of talking about those things that were important to us when we were teenagers that, for whatever reason, do the trick, and kind of give us some great memories and about our childhood. And it's something I really commend you guys for doing.
The idea was the UD was happening already. They were doing comics. And I was guesting on there some, and Trey's like, we should do something else. And he had kind of thrown a few of us together that, know each other. And we're like, we should do the other stuff. We're like the toys, the video games, the cards. And we're like, yeah, that's where the flip side came from, was flipping these other items, just flipping collectibles, so to speak. But it's also the nostalgia of them. And, we sometimes drift and lose our focus or get hyper focused on something like, if you've been watching lately, there's a lot more focus on sports cards. Some of the guys just have been bitten by that bug, and we have other guys that, dabble in the toys a lot, the action figures. We've had some guys do the video games more, and I kind of wish we could get them back on more.
Yeah, right.
But, we like it all. These are all those things that are in our brains for decades and just wormholing in. And so that's where I'm at. I'd rather spend my money on that. Once you're old, you want to buy back your childhood, and I think that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So one of the things that you and I talk about privately, I think, God, maybe once or a week or once every other week, is the state of the current comic market. What we're buying and what we're thinking about buying. Bigger books, longer term plays. Can we talk a little bit about that? About the state of the current comic market? I mean, has the market changed, or has your perspective on the market changed?
Oh, the market has changed tremendously from 5-10 years ago. I mean, you could go out and find keys in bins. You could buy them at reasonable prices. But at this point, everybody is looking to get top dollar. They're investing top dollar. They're not selling for less than top dollar. All the Bronze Age keys have jumped, I don't know, several 100% since 5-10 years ago, if not more. I mean, X-Men 1 is probably up 500% from 5 years ago. Don't quote me on that, but let's call it somewhere in there. So all these things have just crazy. Everybody is focused on how do they make a buck? How do they get this? Grading has just went through the roof. All these things, and I'm not saying I don't do them. I just would rather be in a different segment. I've told you my theory before is this hobby has probably 5 or 10 tiers or segments. It's people that want to just read books are one thing. They're the ones going through the dollar bins or quarter bins and picking out storylines they want to read, and they treasure these stories, and God love them. It's great.
Yeah.
There's another group that just has been connected to this character forever, and they're reading the new books nonstop, and they're, they got the pull list and they go to the shop and it's their social hour, and that's great. There's the people that are kind of in it for thinking that it's easy money in comics, doing the Wednesday Warrior, doing the garage sales. And I won't say it's great, but it's got its place.
Yeah, God bless them. I don't want to do it, but I'm glad somebody does.
There's the people buying the variants, buying these store exclusives, and they love the art. They love putting them on their walls. They love the displays. Okay, that's how you want to spend your money. I'm okay with it. It just is. And then you kind of get into the collecting part, and there's what's your spending tolerance or what's your spending ability. There's a lot of people that $50 to $100 book is that's their achievement for the year. That's what they want to spend on comics. That's what they, their life or their other hobbies prevent, and that's what their achievement is. And they find this book that they want, and they're ecstatic, and that's cool too. And then you just kind of go up those thresholds of, I remember buying my first $100 book, my first $500 book, and the first $1,000 book. My wife about killed me. But you kind of just keep going as you can sell other things, and you find something. My brother gets mad at me all the time because of the stuff I've sold, but I'm like, I just found something I wanted more. And in my head, I could replace that. And I rarely do because I've already had it. Once I've had it, there's a lot less desire to get them back.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean.
And then there's people playing this game at numbers we don't understand, tens of thousands, whether it be the Silver Age market, the Golden Age market, buying up variants.
And by variants, you mean like the Delato Spider-Man?
Yeah, the Delato Spider-Man, the $1,000 to $10,000 variants. That's a different market. The Silver Age collectors are a market. The Golden Age collectors are a market. And then there's the pure up in the stratosphere investors, purely looking at this like it's an art investment, buying the $1,000, $100,000 books, the $1 million Action Comics one, those guys. And we can't relate to each other per se. We all are involved in this same hobby, but we seem to want to fight each other instead of just appreciate what we all appreciate.
Well said. Yeah. So there's a lot of divisiveness. It's kind of confusing to me, and it's certainly unfortunate. But I am super happy that you're here and not part of that noise.
Let's talk about the market and what do I think is going to happen?
Yeah.
I think a lot of these segments aren't going to be affected. Whether the economy goes up, the economy goes down, the passion for the hobby goes. The people buying the cheap books and reading the stories are going to keep doing it. The people that are attached to their characters are probably going to do it until the companies can't put out a quality product, which may or may not happen, but it's unrelated to the market. It is purely a storytelling thing, and they will put their money towards some other form of entertainment if the publishers suck, or they'll move to a new title. I think kind of those higher end segments may plateau a while, maybe dip a bit as the market dips, because it is, if you don't have the discretionary income, the spending's going to go down a bit, and that's fine. I don't think it's going to crash like the 90s per se, but it's going to correct. We've been skyrocketing. Comics have been outperforming the stock market, which the stock market's been crazy. So a lot of them are a little high. So they're either going to plateau, they're going to come down 10, 20%.
It seems like books have come down about 10, 20% here.
That's what I'm hearing. I mean, it just depends what market you're in. I think, if you look at certain things, Golden Age romance is still kind of got a lot of heat, and it's going up, I think. I don't think
Wow.
pre-horror stuff, some of that rare stuff is quite as affected, but definitely the Silver Age and the common Bronze Age stuff, there's enough supply that as demand is a less due to discretionary income, they go down some. You can definitely track the AF-15s, the Hulk 181s, that stuff. That it's down a bit, but I mean those are the blue chip stocks, so to speak. I know everybody uses that term, but it's the things you can trade and get pretty regularly. A lot of buyers, a lot of sellers. It kind of follows that market. I think the market that's going to implode a bit is the store variant market and the Wednesday Warrior stuff. They're just getting cut out. These people that were flipping these books, the stores are doing it now, or somebody's getting to them faster, or somebody's beating them to it. And even if you do get them, there's 100 other people that are looking to sell it right away versus before, at least half of them were buying it and putting it in their collection. Now it feels like everybody's getting a store, buy it, and put it on eBay in the first second. There's all competing against each other and chopping each other's heads off.
Enter Batman, is it 89 and Hell Arisen 3? Oh my. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what to think about that. I mean, we've seen so many characters come and go. I'm not going to talk good or bad about it. I just don't care. It is, people are spending their money how they want. People are arguing over, that's the thing. Arguing over first appearances makes me insane.
So strange, isn't it?
But it's what did you get? What did people have their money wrapped into? Who ordered smart? I don't care. I can argue that there's different appearances, Spawn, there's Malibu 13, there's Rust, there's all that stuff. But they didn't care at the time. These were the accepted books people want. Now we just want to decide what people are going to want long term today. Who knows? It's more of a retroactive hobby in the past. Now we're trying to make it proactive, future looking. Who knows? And we're basing on characters that people create in their heads that the next creator may not like and we'll never see again. I mean, there's 3 versions of Harley Quinn, sort of Harlequin, Joker's daughter, all those. Most of them didn't get anywhere, but one did. So you can't just assume every character is good. I mean, Key Collector, great for what it is, but at this point, it's got so much data in there. Nobody cares about some of these first appearances. So it's only important if somebody cares. Enough people care.
Yeah, there's a lot of, cash that's being poured into the modern market on books that don't really have there's no track record at all. I was looking for like a more substantial word because my God, when it comes to like Punchline, for example, there's not even a plot. Like, nobody even really knows who the character is.
No.
And I'm just like alarmed. It's strange as we've become kind of like a more robust collecting community with more sellers. It seems like everybody's an eBay seller. Everybody's a flipper these days. It's made it very difficult to even like pinpoint a book that's actually rare. Right? I mean, if a book's hot, there's 50 copies on eBay at some price, whether it's a ratio variant and there's 25 copies. And I think that's a change in the modern comic market that's different from, even a year ago, or certainly 5-10 years ago.
Well, people compare it to the 90s when Valiant stuff was getting marked up. You couldn't find it at the store because they were putting it away and bringing it out a few weeks later at higher prices. But it's not even the same as that because they didn't have the market to distribute like this. I mean, eBay has made it, anybody can do it. If you are willing to be the first guy at the store or you're the first person in the building that can get them. I mean, it's out in retail too. It's the cards. I'm watching people trying to get these basketball optics, and every store is sold out because probably the guy stocking the shelves bought them himself or the clerk bought them, and they're just not there because they know there's an instant profit in it. And it it takes these characters out of the people who would want to enjoy them's hands. So the only way something becomes truly collectible long term is if people kind of appreciate it and have it, actually read it, actually enjoy these stories. So the few that are interesting are those ones that kind of slip through the cracks and nobody buys them on Wednesday, and it's months later that, holy cow, that's a great story. People are really getting a buzz and reading it and keeping up. Or, maybe news comes out 2 years later that this got optioned. Okay, that's where there's some interesting things happening, is there's already some fan base, there's some interest versus, well, this new book that's coming out this week got optioned. Nobody's read the story, but it's optioned. Who cares?
Yeah. What are kind of, is that sort of the impetus for you looking towards the global comic market, trying to dig in on books that are harder to source, whether they're golden age books? I mean, we often talk about privately buying things, or at least I guess I talk about maybe publicly too, buying things that you don't have an opportunity to buy them. Like, they don't come to market maybe once, twice a year, if that.
I guess I'm gambling that more people will become interested in it if they see it. They may not. They may still say foreigns are foreigns. I don't care. But, we've seen a few of them take off. And
I can't tell if you're 4 or 40 years ahead of your time, but I know you're one or the other. And if you're 4, you're the smartest guy in comics. If you're 40, your kids are still going to be happy.
Yeah. Well,
but this stuff is truly rare, and a lot of it is just breathtaking. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think I got interested in it because it brings a little fun back in the hobby. We've talked about on the show, you have to be a little social. Like you had said, you got to be a little social. You can't depend on eBay. A lot of these books will never.
Yeah, that shit's changed, right? Like, so when I said that to my friend, like, oh man, you need, you got to get out and get some sources.
No,
not really anymore. Yeah,
not so much anymore. On eBay.
Yeah, and I didn't appreciate that because the market wasn't even like that, 7-10 years ago when I was big into it, and it certainly wasn't like that 20 years ago when I was looking at lists and buying them out of magazines with my pencil and sticking like a money order in the mail and sending it to Mile High or whomever. But with the global comic market, it's all about relationships.
Yeah, I mean, you can get some of the European stuff, especially the English and Italian stuff. That stuff's pretty easily sourced on eBay. Not easily, but the Italian 300 I showed, there's usually a handful listed. Whether it's good prices or not is debatable, but you can buy them. I bought 5 in the last 6 months at a price I think is reasonable. So you can find them, but you got to look. You got to know what it's titled under. I've got 5 different searches for that one because it pops up on all kinds of different things. But when you get to these, South America past 10 years ago, or even Mexico, and further, into the Asia and the less kind of developed countries of Europe, it gets impossible. Because
I've seen a Middle Eastern book where I was just like, how in the hell did you find that?
Oh God, yeah, Indonesia, the Middle East, Lebanese ones are my current amusing thing because just the writing on them that catches it. But it's just, I might have put that one in the pile for something. Oh, it's not here. Oh well. But the there's just some crazy books you don't see. And these guys, even in the group that have been doing it 10 years, some of these books pop up and they're like, how'd you find it? Where'd you get it?
And El Gato Negro, I think it's 19.
Yeah, the Black Cat 50. Yeah, the Black Cat 50, the Chamber of Chills. Yeah, I mean, those are intense. Some point we're going to hit those. But some of these you just can't find. These guys have been looking for decades. Some of these books
Right.
are
those books, their American editions are next to impossible to find unless you're willing to pay top dollar in an auction on Comic Link or Comic Connect, or maybe a CGC board transaction.
Oh yeah.
How do you find their foreign counterpart? Holy cow, the foreign language counterpart. I mean,
well, Robert in the chat. Robert in the chat is a master at it. He got in maybe a year ago.
Yes, he is.
And he's just network. He sees somebody on things and maybe has a book he wants, he or a country he wants to talk to. He's talking to him. He's like, hey, I'm looking for this. If you find one, let me know. If you know somebody, let me know. I'm not quite that aggressive. I'm a little more wait and see what it pops up. I got a few guys I talk to and say, hey, if you see it, let me know. I want it. But I'm not out there hunting. And you can also find what their eBay is, because they don't all use eBay. They use these different sites. They have their own auction sites. South America's got what is it? Oh, I'm blanking. Sorry, but they just have their own eBays. But a lot of times you can't buy from them because they don't want to ship to America, or you don't have a local address. You don't have all these things.
How many of your comics get opened and inspected by customs?
I haven't had any yet.
Oh, well, I have. I absolutely have.
You're questionable at best.
That's a good point. I got the sticker. I forget where that guy was ordering books from, but it's like, this was examined by customs, and I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm sure I'm
on a list somewhere.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I had one day about a month ago.
Black bags and water boards.
I had one shipment all in the same day come from Italy, Mexico, and somewhere else in Europe this time. And I was like, oh, that's not good. That gets you.
That'd be a great name for a comic shop in DC. Black bags and water boards.
Oh, God. I like that one. Oh, God.
I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
You are. But I don't know. It's brought some fun back to the hobby because I got to talk to people. And I mean, Matt and I became friends on one random conversation, and just it kind of has grown over the 5 years, and met some other guys. Robert and I have met a few times in the traditional hobby, but once he got into forums, man, I talked to him 20 times more than I used to. It kind of reminds me of the old days of Google Plus. It's not the same platform or something, but they've got some of the same mentality, that it's this little group of people that are looking for this thing and sharing information with each other.
A shared common purpose, a community, right? That helps one another. And as opposed to one that throws rocks at one another.
Oh, which is
or tries to war with a neighboring tribe.
We've talked about it.
I see the appeal.
Spec is a 4-letter word. It is a
4-letter word. Dude. Oh my God. You're better off saying, like, I steal comic books.
Oh, yeah. It makes people so angry.
Oh man, it really does. I mean, they have visceral, emotional responses. There's a lot of anger surrounding it, and I don't understand.
I want to be right. I want to be right. I want this to be the first appearance. I want this to be the important book. I want to show people I was on it first. And I don't see a lot of that in the foreign community. I mean, honestly, most of them admit they don't know enough to say that. I mean, there's a couple guys who've been doing it for 20 years. They know a lot, but they're still blown away by stuff they find later, or somebody else finds it. I mean, I've seen guys that have sets for what they think are complete for 5 years, and all of a sudden, oh, what the hell is that? We didn't even know one existed. Because a lot of these countries, there's not even a database. You can't go to Grand Comic database and find it. Mexico's got some of the other countries, but some of these things are just unknown. No, they don't even know.
It's not as simple as a My Comic Shop. Let's see what that cover looks like. It's on the list.
You don't know if they were printed in the first place, let alone if they survived. So it's crazy, and it's just a smattering of books produced.
There's no Gerber almanac to look and see what the rarity scale is, or the scarcity scale. I think is what they call it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I learn something new doing the podcast, getting ready to do the show. I learn new things every day because I can't research all these books. I don't know all these languages. I can't translate it all. So it's fun to learn these new things. To me, it's kind of like, I don't know about you, but when I kind of got into comics, the thing that really kind of got my brain going, oh, I love it, was the stupid Marvel trading cards.
Oh, hell yeah.
Reading about their powers and their
right
key issue numbers, the first appearances. That's where that all got in my brain, I think.
Well, because we're sort of spoiled in a way that we weren't when we were kids. And, for guys that are just getting into the hobby now, or for young people, I mean, there wasn't like Wizard Magazine was our one source of information. Maybe you could get a comic buyer's guide at a Walden Books too, but like the Overstreet came out, and you didn't really quite know what the hell to do with it. It wasn't as if you were a Wikipedia search away from figuring out what the first cover appearance was, who this character's siblings are, what the relationship between this character and that character was. Like, you literally had to have the books, buy the books, read the books, forge those relationships with older, more experienced collectors. We had to hustle for information. And I think that you guys are doing that now in the foreign language market. It checks a lot of those boxes for people who are kind of disappointed with the community generally, in the way that it likes to throw rocks at one another instead of sort of helping one another learn. And it's something that's it may be the most attractive piece for me about the foreign language comic market, period. That people are there to help one another uniformly.
I've seen quite a few new people kind of jump in that Facebook group. Even with the new podcast starting, and there've been some other places, other podcasts kind of talking a little bit about foreigners. The Comic Book Investors had a few articles. So there's a little more interest, and people are finding the Facebook group. And every time, not every person, but you hear quite a few people mention, like, this is the most welcoming group I've seen. Everybody's answering questions. You don't get
They're great. I just randomly started talking to a few of them. They're just phenomenal.
You don't get every single post has 2 trolls on it, or you asked a dumb question. There rarely is a dumb question asked there, because everybody was learning at one point, and they all understand it's not easy.
Oh, they'll answer the same question like a gajillion times. I've not been a member of any of these groups for any like significant amount of time, but I see the same questions get asked and answered very kindly, and just new information smattered in. Getting direct messages when I've asked questions. People are like, "Oh, well, how can I help?"
Yeah, exactly.
When the hell was the last time anybody did that on the CBSI Facebook group?
Nobody.
It's like, fuck you. You're wrong. I'm smarter than you.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you know how big my comic book box is? Oh, my God.
I mean, with comics on Facebook, I want to delete my profile a lot of days.
It's painful, isn't it? Sad. I got rid of MeWe. It was so divisive. I've been thrown out of Facebook groups, MeWe groups. You're this guy. You're friends with that guy. I'm just like, whoa.
Truly, the foreign group is about the only thing I really get excited to read, because it's information, it's fun. Instagram's friendly for the most part. You don't get as much trolling there. I don't know why. I don't do the MeWe.
Less words.
I guess maybe it's just pictures. Everybody's just showing off, and we all just watching. Doc Joe asked a question I think I kind of dabbled on. He asked, "Are all these older foreign books easily found abroad?"
Oh yeah.
It depends, and define easily. I mean, they're not in the shops per se, and they're not in the bins. They're mostly in collections, and you got to remember that there's.
I had a friend that went to Russia, right? Married a real pretty girl from Russia. She's like a model or something, and he's like, "Oh, well, what do you want me? I'll bring you a souvenir." And I'm like, "Go to a comic shop, and I want you to FaceTime me with Facebook, and we're gonna see what we can find." Beat 90s American comics in like St. Petersburg or something. It was like one of the big cities. I'm like, I give up. No, I thought maybe I could find like a Black Widow in Russian. How sweet would that be? No, none to be had.
It depends on the country. It depends on the age. Pen experiences are pretty common. Some of the older ones in some of the European countries, Italy's kind of been there a bit. But you just can't find them easily even there on the ground. Europe is a little better. You go to Mexico, it's real tough. They're just not there. They're in collections, and you got to hope a collection pops up. I see this guy in Brazil who's always picking stuff up. He's usually finding them at, open air markets, which is, basically a garage sale or a swap meet. It's luck and time. That's why we don't say that they're absolutely scarce, but they're hard to find. It's like, trying to find a golden age collection, hitting the Craigslist ads, the yard sales stuff. Not to say you'll never find a golden age book, but you don't find many.
I haven't.
Yeah. I hit an auction. I found a few one time. That's my story. It's like that. It's just really tough to uncover where they are. And not to say that they're not there. There's probably a handful of, at least semi well-off people that had somewhere to put them, and they're in a closet, and they may or may not know their value. But even Mexico's the easiest country to talk about. I've met a few collectors there. I know more about it. I think it's just an easier market for people to talk about and make connections because they're local, or they have family there, or whatever. And even they say they can't find a lot of these books. The NonCanons, they exist. I got half a short box of them, but there's 40 some issues. I don't have them all, and I've got 2 or 3 copies of some. But I've been doing it for 3 years, and I've networked with some guys that have family there, and every time they get them, I'm like, I'll buy them. I don't say no. And so I get first dibs at many more because I don't say no. But if you think about it, I've been open buying those for several years, and that's all I have. That's not a lot. The nice copy of the wedding issue. I think I got it at a grading pile. This is the other copy, but
oh my god! You just let me know when you're gonna sell me your crappy copies. I'm still waiting.
The nice copy I got, there's only a couple of pedigrees talked about, and one is the HNG, which was like a FIO kind of copy. I'm not gonna say the other one, but there was another kind of group that was a personal collector, and then the one I bought was from a collector whose father had collected them all and kept them in pretty nice shape, and he had a nice run of them, and he was breaking those up slowly. But those are the 3 I've heard of being high-end copies of these books. Most of them are in that very good range or abouts. It isn't really freaking near impossible to find high-end copies of these. So if you can, buy them. I look at it as golden age. Find outside of the file copies with Harvey and stuff, you find a high grade, of some of these things. They don't exist, or there's 3 of them. That's it. So it's at least a ballpark where I can find something that there's 3 of, and it costs money, but I can at least think about it instead of having to sell my house and live in a box to afford those books that there's 3 of.
Oh shoot! Well, I've kept you a little bit longer than the hour I promised you, and I appreciate every single moment. I would like for you to take a couple seconds and let people know where they can find you, where they can talk with you, how they can find you online, where they can watch the work that you and Matt Roybal are doing, as well as the work that you and Ben and Dino and Brian and the guys are doing. So let us know.
All right. So catch us on the YouTube channel, Tales from the Flip Side. We do the Flip Side show Monday nights at 9:30, and that's kind of the general collectible show. Global Comic Safari is pre-recorded. We do that on usually release on Tuesdays. We do some special episodes here and there, so those will pop up randomly. You can follow me at Comics Are the Norm on Instagram. You can see me occasionally on comicbookinvest.com, and they're a good partner and supporter. And if you're going to be in the New England area, I will be actually at a con, the Northeast Comic Con, in Boxborough, Massachusetts, near Boston, March 13th to the 15th. Some of the CBSI guys are going to do some panels and some Q&As and some contests and some just fun stuff. I'm going to do a brief presentation on foreign comics. So if you're a foreign collector and you want to see some, or if you're not a foreign collector and you just want to see some of these books in person, come do it, because it's just a cool experience to see some of these things and see 10 versions of a cover. So check it out.
Jon, my friend, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being such a good friend and for joining me for this hour. If you're not watching Tales from the Flip Side, do yourself a favor and turn it on. If you're even remotely interested in foreign language comics, because that cover looks neat. Global Comic Safari is an incredible way to dip your toe into that water. Thank you, my friend. And thank you all for joining us. It was a pleasure.